Hi 6th graders, I hope you've been doing well. Today we're going to do our next lesson of Unit 5, which is solving equations. Our learning target is I can solve an equation using inverse operations. So let's take a look at what inverse operations are. They are operations that reverse the effect of another operation. So we got some examples. If we have addition, the opposite of addition is subtraction. And it goes the other way. If we have subtraction, the opposite of subtraction is addition. Okay, so that's addition and subtraction. Moving on to multiplication and division. If we have multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Same thing with dividing. If we're dividing, the opposite of dividing is multiplying. Okay, so that's what inverse operations are. It's just the opposite. Alright, so I have a bunch of words for you to fill out in our white box. To find solutions, we isolate the variable. We get the variable by itself. This happens when the variable appears on only one side of the equation. You do this by performing inverse operations to the variable. So I'm sure that didn't make a whole lot of sense right now. Don't worry, we'll go through many problems where it will start to make sense for you. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's get started practicing. Remember, if you don't have this filled out, pause the video and fill it out. Here we go. We need to solve each equation using inverse operations. I love solving equations. This is my favorite lesson. So, bear with me, alright? We have b plus 7 and that equals 9. So when I'm solving equations, I like to draw a line down my equal sign. So I know we have two sides. We have the left side, which has b plus 7, and we have the right side, which just has 9. Okay? So I drew my line. What we want to do is we want to get b all by itself. So that means b is the only letter, or the only thing we have on this whole side. But right now, what else do we have on the left side? Right, we have this plus 7. So what we need to do is we need to do the opposite of the plus 7. So if you remember, what's the opposite of addition? Let me find it. The opposite of addition is subtraction. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to subtract 7 from both sides. So we're going to subtract 7 from our left side and from our right side. Okay, and then I just like to draw a line so it looks like a problem that we're solving. 7 minus 7 is just 0. Okay, so you could just cross it off. If you wanted to write 0 here, you could, but 0 doesn't matter. We don't need it there. So the only thing we have left on the left-hand side is just b. Okay, so b equals, now we need to do the other side. 9 minus 7 is 2. So our answer is b equals 2, and we know we're done because b is on the side all by itself. So now we can check our work. Let's plug a number in there. Let's plug our b into our equation. So we're taking 2 plus 7 equals 9. Well, 2 plus 7 is 9, so that does equal 9. So we were right. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Number 2, we have a minus 10 equals 4. Before I do any solving, draw your line down the equal sign. Okay, we want a by itself. But what else do we have on the left-hand side? Right, we have this minus 10. Well, we want to get rid of that minus 10. We want to move it over to the other side. So the opposite of minus 10 is, what's the opposite of minusing? Or subtracting? It's adding. We're going to add 10 to both sides. Okay, and I like lining my numbers up. Super nice. Alright, so let's go ahead and subtract negative 10 plus 10, or 10 minus 10. That's 0. So we can go ahead and we can cross that off. That's just 0. So we're left with just a on the left-hand side. Now we're taking 4 plus 10, which is 14. And that's our answer. So now let's just double check our work. We're going to plug 14 in for a. So we're taking 14 minus 10. Does that equal 4? 14 minus 10 is 4. So we are correct. Moving on to number 3. This time we are taking 7 times x equals 56. Again, draw a line down your equal sign so you know which side it's on. So remember, when we have a number and a letter sitting right next to each other, that really means multiplying. So if it helps, draw on a dot so that you know we're multiplying. Okay, right now we want x by itself, but we have this 7 next to that x. So right now it's 7 times x. We need to do the opposite of times. What's the opposite of multiplying? If you don't remember, look up here. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So what we are going to do is we are going to divide both sides by 7 to get rid of that 7. So you could either write divide by 7, or I like writing a fraction, divide by 7. And remember, if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. Okay, 7 divided by 7 is really just 1, so we could just cross those 7's out and we're just left with x, or 1x. That's the exact same thing. Okay, 56 divided by 7 is 8, so x is equal to 8. Now let's plug that in and check. 7 times 8, does that equal 56? 7 times 8 is 56, so 56 equals 56. Alright, and number 4, we have w divided by 5 equals 4. So remember, this sign means divided. Okay, let's draw our line in. So we have w divided by 5. We want w by itself, so we need to get rid of this divided by 5. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So what we are going to do is we are going to multiply both sides by 5. Okay, draw your line. When we take 5 times 1 over 5, your 5's cancel out. We're just left with w. Okay, 4 times 5 is 20, so w equals 20. Now to check your work, we're going to plug 20 in for w. 20 divided by 5, does that equal 4? 20 divided by 5 is 4, so we are good. Alright, so those are the types of problems that you will see. I would like you to try to do 5 through 8 on your own. It's just like 1 through 4, and then come back and check your work. I'm not going to go through them super in-depthly because 1 through 4 is the exact same thing. Alright, so pause the video and come back. Number 5, we have d plus 5 equals 11. Draw your line. Right now we want d by itself, so we need to do the opposite of this add 5. The opposite of adding is subtracting, so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Our 5's cancel out, we're just left with d. 11 minus 5 is 6. So d equals 6. Moving on to the second word, number 6. C minus 5 equals 18. Draw your line. We want c by itself, so we need to get rid of this minus 5. The opposite of minus 5 is add 5 to both sides. Our 5's cancel out. We're just left with c. 18 plus 5 is 23. Moving on to number 7, this time we have 2z equals 13. Draw your line. Remember, this is 2 times z. We want z all by itself, so we do the opposite of times, which is divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. Our 2's cancel out. We're just left with z. 13 divided by 2 is a fraction, so we'll just keep it as 13 over 2. And our last one, y divided by 3 equals 1.5. So right now, remember, this stands for dividing. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Our 3's cancel out. We're just left with y. 1.5 times 3 is 4.5. If you didn't know that, you could have used a calculator. Alright, so that is how we solve one-step equations. Now we're going to practice a little bit harder ones. So to solve two-step equations, here are your rules. You add or subtract first, and then you multiply or divide. Okay, so let's take a look. We have 2x minus 5 equals 11. Okay, we draw our line down our equal sign. We want x by itself. But before we will do anything with the 2, we want to get this minus 5 over to the other side. Okay, so to get that minus 5 over, we do the opposite of minusing, which is adding. So we are going to add 5 to both sides. Okay, our 5's cancel out. We're just left with 2x on the left-hand side. So now 11 plus 5 is 16. Okay, so we have 2x is equal to 16. Now we still want to get this x by itself. So to do that, this is 2 times x. We are going to divide by 2. And our 2's cancel out. We're just left with x. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Alright, so now let's practice. We have 6x minus 3 equals 9. Draw your line down the center, or down the equal sign. We need to first add or subtract. So we want to get this minus 3 over to the other side. So the opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. Our 3's cancel out. We're just left with 6x. 9 plus 3 gives us 12. Okay, now we have 6 times x. The opposite of times is divide, so we are going to divide both sides by 6. Our 6's cancel out. We're just left with x. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So that is our answer. Moving on to the second one. 4x plus 5 equals 21. Draw your line down the equal sign. Right now we need to add or subtract first. So we have a plus 5. We want to get rid of that plus 5. So we're going to minus 5 from both sides. Those cancel out. We're just left with 4x on the left. 21 minus 5 is 16. Alright, and remember this is 4 times x, so we want to get rid of the 4. So the opposite of times is divide. So those cancel out. We're just left with x. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Moving on to number 3. This time we have x over 4 plus 9 equals 12. So again, before we do anything with our x and our 4, we first need to get rid of the 9. So right now it's plus 9. The opposite of plus is minus, so we're going to minus 9 from both sides. Alright, when we do that, our 9's cancel out. We're left with x over 4. 12 minus 9 equals 3. So right now we have x divided by 4. Remember the opposite of dividing is multiplying, so we're going to multiply both sides by 4. Our 4's cancel out, so we're just left with x. 3 times 4 is 12. Alright, and one last problem. We have x over 5 minus 7 equals 2. So again, we want to add or subtract first. We need to move that minus 7 over to the other side. So the opposite of minus is plus, so we're going to add 7 to both sides. Our 7's cancel out. We're left with x over 5 equals 2 plus 7 gives us 9. Now it's x divided by 5. The opposite of dividing is multiplying, so we're going to multiply both sides by 5. Our 5's cancel out. We're just left with x. 9 times 5 is 45. And that is how we solve two-step equations. So, if you have any questions, please send me a message so that I can help you out. Otherwise, I hope you have a fabulous